to the Speaker Toolkit. This is a brand new series for female speakers that want to feel unwavering confidence in their public speaking and really master the power of their voice and their message so that you can deliver an incredible performance, an incredible speech, and inspire your audiences all around the world. Now, today's episode is all about being a podcast guest and 2 things you can do to prepare yourself to feel unstoppably confident when you sit in that interview chair, you stand, you meet with the podcast host and deliver a really engaging, aligned with your powerful message podcast episode. So being a guest on a podcast can often be a little bit of like a nervous territory because you don't know what's going to happen. If it's your own podcast, for example, you know how you run that. If you've done a lot of podcast interviews, you'll know from doing it, they're all kind of similar, but they're all kind of different at the same time. And the more prepared you feel and are, the less nerves are going to come up. The less nervous you are going to feel when you're sat in that chair or when you're walking into that studio, that space. Now, the 2 things that I wanted to give you to really prepare you are this. Firstly, relating to the interview, the questions themselves. Know or have a rough idea of what you're going to be asked. And you can do this in 2 ways. The podcast host themselves might say, these are the questions that I like to ask. They might reach out to you and ask what you want to be asked specifically. But this is where you need to open up this line of communication if they don't do so. Drop a message, drop them an email and ask, could you send me a rough idea, of the questions, even if it's not everything. I want to have an idea of what I'm going to be answering, what questions I'm going to be asked, so that I can give your audience really valuable, really potent, powerful answers. So I'd love to get the questions in advance of the podcast session. The other way you can do this is you can ask the podcast host if they would be open to you giving them questions to be asked. Some podcast hosts actually prefer this. They will come to you and they will say, actually, I really appreciate that. I'm always thinking, what can I ask this person? And you've sort of taken a job, you've taken some of the work away from them having to sort of prepare it, because you can literally go to them and say, look, I've prepared a number of questions. You can choose from these, you can ask me all of these, but these are going to give your audience, your listeners, a lot of value to take away. So they're your 2 sort of question, interview, in the moment related preparations. So either ask them, do you have set questions that you ask? Would I be able to get access to these questions? Could you send me these questions over in advance so that I can make sure I, have a look at them? I'm not just speaking rubbish into the open. I can sort of prepare a little bit and give value to your audience. Or you go to them and say, would you like me to send you some questions to ask me that are going to be really valuable for your audience, for your listeners? Now, the other way you want to prepare, so add that one right now into your Speaker Toolkit. Now, the other way to really diminish nerves and make sure you feel insanely confident is ask them what the setup's going to be. The more, when you're in an environment that's new or that feels slightly nerve-wracking, out of your control, is to literally experience the environment or get to know the environment or what it's going to be like as much as possible. So speak to them beforehand and ask, what's the setup going to be like? How is it going to run? Like, how long do we have? Do we have time to retake things? Is it literally like an hour in the studio, so we've got to be bam, 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 bam? What's the setup going to be? Am I going to be sitting? Am I going to be standing? Do you know the colours? You know, if your branding is bright orange and you're sat in a bright orange chair and you blend in and it's visual as well as audio, you want to know these things so that you can plan your outfit accordingly and look a certain way. Okay, it's going to be recorded visually and audibly. I know that, note that. I need to think about how I'm going to look and make sure that, you know, is aligned with your brand, with your personal brand. But you also then can consider factors like, okay, well, it is audio recorded and it's visually recorded, so I can have footage for both of those things as well. You're prepared to be filmed and you're prepared to be audibly recorded. Same with the setup. If you know you're going to be sat on a sofa sort of chair, you know what to wear. If you know you're going to be stood up, you know, again, what sort of thing you're going to wear. If they have a link to the venue, they can send you that over. If the time is going to be short, you know you literally have to get in there, get started and crack on. The more you can know and knock down it's sort of knocking down the bowling pins really of wonder, of unknown, and knowing what you're going to be stepping into. So they are my top two things that if you are stepping into a podcast recording as an interviewee, so you are being asked the questions, they're the two things. Know what questions, either by you sending them or them sending them to you. Get an idea of what you're going to be discussing, what the topics are, and make sure that you can give their listeners as much value as possible. And then 2, know what the setup is. Ask what the setup is so you know what you're walking into. Are there going to be microphones? Are there going to be cameras? People going to be taking pictures? Is it going to be videoed? Is it just going to be audio? There's 101 unknowns. You can work out your route then if you don't know where it is. You can work out if there's a coffee place nearby or not. They will tell you whether it's a relaxed sort of chat, whether it's more official. You know whether you're going to be sat across a table, whether you're going to be sat in a comfier sofa. You know what to wear. All of those things are things that you then are aware of or have a bit more awareness around, rather than walking into something you literally have no idea what it's going to be like. If you found this useful or you've got any other questions about podcasting, interviewing, being on a panel, maybe on stage, the similar sort of thing applies to interviews on stages and, you know, interview panels as well, then ask me any questions you've got in the comments below. And if you found this useful, send this to a friend that has a podcast that, you know, or somebody you know that is an interviewee a lot on podcasts, because this could be really, really helpful. Set yourself up for success. Set your interviewees up for success. If you're the one interviewing, you're the podcast host, and I will see you on the next episode.